Hello, everybody. I'm Suzanne Hacker, and I'm your vacation rental business coach with Welcoming Wow. And I am here today with Leo with SuperHog, and we are going to discuss all things related to SuperHog and vacation rentals. So, Leo, if you could just introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your company and what sets you apart, we'll get started there.
Hi, Suzanne. Thank you very much for having me on. So I'm Leo Walton. I am one of the co-founders of SuperHog. SuperHog is a risk management business, primarily working in the vacation rental space. We have been for around 7 years. And our reason for doing business is to make the hosting experience safer, more streamlined, better, and ultimately get more people involved in the industry. And the way we do that is by building tools, primarily for hosts, but also some for guests, but primarily for hosts, that allow the process of checking in a guest, getting comfortable with who your guest is, and having a risk management strategy much easier and efficient. I at the time was working for a company called One Fine Stay, which went on to be one of the global leaders and was sold to a French hotel group. And my first job, I was going around door to door essentially and hawking the product to homeowners who didn't know much about what home sharing was, and explaining it to them. And questions that came up time and time again were, what if the guest is fraudulent? What if they're a criminal? What if they have a party? And we realised, myself and my co-founder Humphrey, that this was a gap in the market to provide tools that made things safer, because it was a constant problem. And there wasn't anything on the shelf from insurance companies that was really fitting the bill, because it was a new type of industry. And also insurance, as we'll discuss I'm sure during this, is not actually a great solution when it comes to home sharing, because really there's a very acute type of risk that you're subject to as a host, and a lot of that can be sort of dealt with by screening a guest and being more thorough in your check-in process. So it was quite a complicated issue, but ultimately that's where the opportunity we saw as being was to, how do you get non-traditional type bookings into homes? So not a 12-month contract, not a 6-month contract where someone's gone through a background check and a lease check and a credit check. This is very short, condensed types of bookings. And again, the problems that we saw were Halloween, there'd be parties, New Year's Eve, there'd be parties. People would do weddings in properties because they just say they would come for a holiday, then 200 people would come through the door. So that's ultimately where the idea came from.
Sure. And where did you come up with that unique name of SuperHog?
Which is where I thought you were going with, actually, Suzanne. Sorry, I didn't answer. So yes, of course. Unique name. I appreciate you saying that. I like that.
Yeah.
So SuperHog stands for Super Host, Operator, and Guest. And what we're trying to do is ensure that we can connect super hosts, operators, and guests with one another and allow them to transact safely.
I love it. See, then, and everyone can remember the name SuperHog and know where to find it. So yeah. I'm assuming they're going to find that at www.superhog.com, or is there a better place?
Correct, www.superhog.com or www.knowyourguest.superhog.com. And Know Your Guest is essentially the core of what we do. We do Know Your Guest checks for hosts and property managers. And that's where it all starts. And then on top of that, they can add our different products. So they might add our $5 million protection that sits after the guest has been screened, or they might add us to do a piece of financial remittance for them, so deposit waiver or deposit remittance, which we can do, so we can handle money for them but send them deposit waiver funds on a monthly basis or hold deposits for them. But as I say, it all starts with that Know Your Guest check, because if we screen a guest, and we'll screen their name, their phone number, their email address, we can tell a lot about them from that. Is it a real email? Is it a real phone number? Is it deliverable? Is it registered to them? Has it been linked with fraud? Is it on any fraud databases? Like, you can tell a lot about the person by the background check. If someone falls foul of that record and shows that they've done something criminal, illegal, fraudulent, or they flag to our own records and we've hosted them before and we know they've done something wrong, we can stop the booking from taking place. So it all starts there. So we will never protect with our $5 million guarantee an unverified booking. And obviously we can help make things safer and stop clients getting as many chargebacks, parties and things like that. And what we can also do is we can do an ID and a selfie cross-reference screen as well as an additional thing.
Yeah, that is becoming more of a thing. The first time I ran into it last year when I went on a cruise, and I was like, what do you mean I got to take a selfie and submit that along with this? It's like, what? But yeah, I've seen it again then since then. And I was like, okay, I guess that's now a thing. Yeah. So that's awesome that you guys do all of those things.
Yeah, but what's really important is that it's intelligent as well. So if you've gone through it once, you don't need to go through it again in the same way. You just need to put your details in. The system will recognize you, and assuming you didn't have a raging party in the last property you stayed in, you'll be pushed on to the next stage, which is usually it's time to pay your security deposit or deposit waiver, or tip the homeowner's terms and conditions, or the SuperHog terms and conditions. What's really important about our product is we're at the service of hosts and property managers, so we try and push our branding and our logos into the background during the guest journey, and we put the property managers logos in that. The emails look like they've come from the property managers when we get the guest to start the process. Wow. Because what this really should be is a tool for the property manager to build up their brand recognition so that the guest realizes, oh, I'm staying with ABC Villas in Florida. Right. And I know that because they sent me on their verification journey with their logo. They sent me an email saying time to verify. And you know what? That's the best gift we give people, because it allows you to then retarget people after they've gone home and hopefully get them to come back and stay with you. The reason for that is that we obviously, in collecting information about them, we can then provide you with that email and that phone number so you can retarget them as well.
Okay, awesome. Now, are your products also appropriate for those owners who just have one or two properties?
Absolutely. So our client base is very, 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 very varied. We have clients with a couple of thousand listings at the bigger end, and then clients with 2 or 3 or 1 property. Ultimately, anyone that wants to put together their risk management strategy should come and talk to us, because it doesn't matter how much hosting you're doing, you want to make sure your properties are safe. So most people use their PMS to connect with us, and lots of PMSs focus on that smaller host. But also you can connect with us directly if you're not using a PMS, and just send people on email and we can facilitate that. So very much applicable to small hosts as well as large hosts.
Okay, that's awesome. So how does SuperHog differ from some of the other companies that are out there? What sets you guys apart?
So ultimately, the level of check that we do is very stringent, but we're also leveraging our own database because we're the market leader. So we're able to tell you what's happened in other properties around the world. We're very much connecting property managers at a global level that never need to meet, because we can help save someone a terrible booking in New York because of information that we've got about a guest who stayed in London. So it's that global network, it's that reach that we have. And also it's layering on the other products. So we're not just selling one package. You can use us for just your basic screening. You can use us for screening and ID capture. You can layer in deposit waiver and credit card capture. You can also layer in protection. So it's very modular, the way we've built it. But ultimately, it allows that ultimate flexibility allows it to be applicable to many different types of hosts.
Okay, yeah, that's great. So going back then, I guess a little bit earlier in your career when you were working for One Fine Stays before you started SuperHog, I'm sure you have some advice with all of your experience too. What would be maybe your 2 best pieces of advice to a vacation rental owner or for someone who's just thinking about getting started in this business?
Yeah, this definitely goes back to my first sort of exposure to vacation rental, which would have been back in 2012. It's important to remember that I think this might sound, if it sounds very obvious, Suzanne, then just slap me and I'll come up with more. But you've got the property manager, therefore it's your responsibility to find guests. Never forget that. You shouldn't just sit behind 1 or 2 booking channels that work for you. You should be proactive in your local area. If there's relocation bookings, corporate bookings, like the best property management companies that I deal with, size is irrelevant, by the way, are the ones that get the best occupancy for their hosts, or that they manage them, that they're arbitraging or they're owning them themselves. are the ones that go out there and they pound the pavements and they find the opportunities to take different bookings. It doesn't matter what size you are, that is 100% what I would do, because then you're going to find you get that recurring guest who suddenly starts staying Monday through Thursday, 6 months of the year. Wow, that's amazing. I've got huge amounts of occupancy in this property. Let's go and get another one. And I was talking to one of my clients recently who was saying he drives around to all the business parks and he drives around to all the hotels in his area and he sees where people's he looks at the logos on the vans parked outside, and then he calls them up and he's like, hey, I saw you were staying in insert generic hotel name last night. Do you know I've got 25 vacation rentals in your town? So that's definitely the thing. You've got to think about your business in that way and think about it as like, yes, the SOTAs are great, but I can't rely on them. I shouldn't rely on them.
Correct. Now that's great advice. I love that, and very practical things that people can just do if they're needing to get more bookings. Yes, don't rely on that. Don't just rely on discounting your prices either, because that's to me like the last resort. You're not going to get the kind of guests that you want either if you're doing it that way. So I love your practical advice there with that. Thank you. Yeah. So is there what are the other, you've talked a little bit about, all the different modules that somebody or a property manager owner can sign up for. What is one that maybe wouldn't be obvious or is maybe a little hidden, but that is super valuable?
Yeah, great question. So you're right. Most people come to us for our background screening because it's such an obvious thing to do, right? Find out know who your guest is, know your guest. Find out that they're not going to be a fraudster, a criminal. Do that work up front. Also, it's a deterrent. If you can say you're using screening technology, you will deter someone from booking who might be on a stag party or doing something where they're not planning on being too careful about your property. So that's why people come to us. But actually, I think the most important thing amongst our suite of products is the damage waiver and deposit option. The reason being that we add a screen in the guest journey where you give them the option of paying a set deposit amount, which they will get back, chosen by you, or a set waiver, which they won't get back, which we'll send to you minus the handling fee. But what that allows you to do is calculate your own risk, but ultimately create a new revenue line for your business so that you're never left waiting for funds if people break things. But it liberates you because you're suddenly not chasing people about the $40 vase or the red wine stain or the burn mark on the kitchen work surface, the incidental things that can happen. You have the money to just pay for them and sort them out. Oftentimes the guests will forget they bought the waiver, so they're just delighted that you haven't chased them about the small thing. So it's going to raise those reviews from 4s to 5s. And ultimately improve relations with you and your guests, so you can get on with just delighting them, talking about the good stuff and trying to get them to come back again next year. Equally, it opens up that revenue line for your business. Or they choose the deposit option, which will hold for you, and you don't have any chance of losing the money because you've got it held in a deposit. But 80-90% of people will choose that waiver because it's easier, better for them. So it's a way of getting better reviews, and it's a way of just removing yourself from those quite difficult conversations you might have to have about something that ultimately might be wear and tear, might be damaged, might not be worth that much. It might come across like you're penny pinching.
Okay. So then to follow up on that, if let's say a property owner or property manager says, you know what, I'm just going to go the deposit, like getting that deposit, and I'm not going to go with the damage waiver kind of insurance kind of piece. Is there with that deposit? So let's say the deposit is say $350. I know it's pretty low, but let's say they chose that amount and the damage ended up being $500. The owner is then just out that additional $150 in the scenario, correct? Or is there also some kind of waiver added on automatically?
Yeah, so what we would advise people is you can always work with us for the protection side, and we'll protect you from $500 up to $5 million. So we would normally say if you don't want to charge a waiver, just charge a $500 deposit without the waiver option. But then you know that if it's more than $500, SuperHog will pay for anything above that, and we're holding the deposit amount for anything under that. So yeah, you can always make sure, there's always a way of making sure that your liability is zero through either a mix of waivers, deposits, or just deposit, and then additional protection. Or you might have your own home insurance in place. Again, ours is modular, so you might have your own, but it's likely that you'll have an excess on that. So put it to be level with whatever your excess amount is, so that you're never left holding the baby, so to speak.
Sure. Awesome. Great advice. I'm so glad to know that that's how you guys do that. So, so what is, I know this is rather brief, but what is maybe one thing that I haven't asked you about that you think is super important for people to know about SuperHog?
So we're here to guide you to come up with the right risk management strategy for your market. So it really will depend. If you're in a city, you're going to be exposed to different types of risk than if you're in the Ozarks or Myrtle Beach or something like that, which is set up for vacation rental. And so even people turning up and having a bit of a party, if you know about it, isn't that big a deal. So so that's what I'd say. Like, we're here to facilitate whatever that is. So come and talk to us, and it might be that we just implement a background check for you to stop the fraudsters and the criminals, but actually you're quite relaxed about big group bookings. Therefore, you might just want to take a nice big deposit waiver or a nice big deposit so that you've got the means to pay for any damage that might happen when big groups of people are getting together. So it's very market specific. So I would say that would be the one thing that people might not be aware of. It's like, it doesn't just mean, oh, I'm in London, I'm in New York, I'm having these wild parties, I need to use technology. It's everybody, because nobody wants criminals, fraudsters, people that are potentially going to do dangerous things in properties. So use it, because then you can deter them from coming and you can push them somewhere else and make things ultimately safer. And then, as I say, we can facilitate whatever strategy you need and give you products to fit that strategy. So in my opinion, every property manager needs a risk management strategy, and that doesn't necessarily have to involve everything, but it might even involve SuperHog. But everyone should be aware of what their risk exposure is and have a plan for it.
Sure, that's awesome. So does everyone that comes to SuperHog and wants to sign up, do they get to talk to a person to help develop that risk management, or is there a certain level that it's like, no, just do this?
So if you want to have a conversation with us, absolutely, fill in our business form, which I'm sure you can send out a link to, and that will send it to our team, and one of the team can organise a call. So yeah, of course, there is a way of self-signing up as well, but a lot of people prefer to have a conversation, and that's totally fine too.
That's awesome. Yeah, having a risk management strategy is not something that you hear talked about enough, but it's, vacation rental business is a business. So you're right, we should be talking about risk management in this business even more than I think we do, because I don't think it's talked about enough, Leo.
Well, that's it. And if we can save you 20 grand in chargebacks or 50 grand in a big party clear up, great. If we can also make you revenue because you decide the damage waiver is the right thing for you, even better. That's going to change your acquisition strategy. The amazing thing was, I was having a conversation with someone, they were saying, look, there was plenty of properties we just used to turn down because we saw them as party properties. But working with you allows us to take them on, because we can then appropriately put whatever tools we need to in place to mitigate those risks, which is awesome. And then you find that actually a lot of that was holding you back, and you can go in a certain direction with it. So we're just trying to unlock growth for your business.
Sure, that's great. Well, I thank you so much for taking the time with me today, and I'm sure we'll catch up again soon, and we'll have even more to share with people. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Suzanne.